Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you are, however you might be listening/watching. Thank you for making this part of your day. I am Justin,
I'm Alexander.
and we are the hockey podcast you're about to hear. And Alexander, I had a question for you. Are people born with photographic memories, or do they kind of just develop over time?
I'm waiting for mine to develop.
Right, I know. And the sad thing is, there's like a whole generation of people that won't get that joke. but on that note, where are we starting now?
Well, just a quick update of where we're currently at. The off season is done, and we are about to head into the regular season of the 21-22 NHL regular season, which is expected to have and scheduled to have 82 regular season games and almost a month off during the month of February for the Olympic break.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the upward trajectory that we're heading towards. With dates and stuff have all been released for like the trade deadline now is like the 21st of March, and
Sheesh.
all that other off-season dates and stuff, and like the last date that they would play the Stanley Cup final and when the playoffs start, and all those things have been set, which I don't even look at now because I can totally see where some of those things are going to get moved
Mm-hmm.
based on potential future world events or just problems. So
Mm-hmm.
not going to state any dates or anything because it could all change.
Oh, yes, and rather quickly, too.
Yes.
But hopefully
Um,
not. Fingers crossed everything goes according to plan and
yeah,
all that good
they've done a
stuff.
pretty good job the past couple of years of trying to get things organized and in line and stick to schedules and whatnot. And they have actually done a fairly decent job of that as far as the end thing goes. Maybe the execution along the way wasn't perfect, but in the end, we have awarded Stanley Cups every season, and
Which,
they don't have too big of asterisks next to them.
nope. I'll say as long as you give out a cup, I think that's what you want.
As long as you can give out the cups and the cap doesn't matter, you can do whatever you want.
There it is.
Now,
Or,
as we enter this next season, this is season 3 for the hockey podcast you're about to hear.
mm-hmm.
And we do have a couple ways that you could reach out to us if you want to provide any feedback, show ideas, topic ideas. Um, if you have criticisms, send them to Justin. If you have any comments, I'm available. And
It's the
uh,
same email.
and what would that email be that people could reach us at there, Justin?
That email would be hpyath@gmail.com. So basically the acronym for our podcast at gmail.com. And you can also comment directly on the YouTube videos if you so choose. Either way is whichever you choose. We'd be delighted to hear from you. Unless it's directed at Alexander, then he can answer your questions. So, yeah.
Well, we'd be delighted just to hear from anybody because we still don't think anybody actually listens to this podcast. So even if we just get one person to reach back or a bot that reaches back,
Yeah.
I feel like that would be enough for me.
Yeah, happy set. I would be
Uh,
set.
okay. Well, then, let's get into our episode, which in this episode we will be covering the Atlantic and the Metro, and then we will release a second episode covering the Pacific and the Central. And what we're doing this year, instead of ranking each division where we think guys will finish 1 through 8 or whatnot, we are going to use, as everybody is going to now, with betting being a thing, we will use the over under points total for the season set by Vegas. So a team will have a over and all end in a, we'll just take Tampa Bay for first, right? They're at 106.5 points, and so if you're unsure of how this works, basically we have to decide whether we think they will have basically 106 or less, or 107 or more
Mm-hmm.
points in the season. That's why everything's marked at a half because you basically have to go up or down from there to be right or wrong from a betting standpoint. And we're going to use that as our how we rank teams and whether or not we think they will be better or worse than what the Vegas odds say, because the Vegas odds are generally pretty accurate when they put down lines for this kind of stuff. It's amazing sometimes how close they are to actual outcomes.
Right.
So this is also a nice way of being able to look at it and say, I think this team could still finish third in the division, but I think they're going to finish third in the division with way fewer points than anybody thinks that they're going to have. So I think it gives a little bit more accurate look and a little easier way to go back at the end of the season and say, hey, Vegas said they would have 106 points. I thought they would have more, and they had 105 points. I was wrong.
Right. Would have
So,
lost money on that bet.
yep, yep.
Yep.
So that's how things are looking this year. And anything else from you, Justin, before we get rolling in the Atlantic?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I was gonna say we didn't really have a chance to review our predictions the first year we did them because the season didn't really finish exactly how it was supposed to go. So
This is true. This is true. We gotta pass on that one.
all that hard work for nothing. Whew. So,
Yes.
but yeah,
All
nothing
right.
else. So let's dive right in.
All right. Then we will start with Tampa Bay is the defending Stanley Cup champion, so it's only right to start with them.
Seems fair.
They are predicted from Vegas to have 106.5 points this year after 82 games. Justin, do you think that is high or low?
I think that is high. I think they're gonna be under.
Under 106.5.
Mm-hmm. I think with what they've done the last couple seasons, their goal is to get to the playoffs. They don't care how they get there. They just want to get there.
I think that is fair, just from that standpoint of, yeah, they don't play for President's trophies anymore.
Yep.
They did that, didn't work, and then they
Cause,
stopped playing for President's trophies, and
mm-hmm.
it worked.
Yeah.
So I basically, I basically Tampa Bay has a 82 game preseason that they're going to be playing.
Let's test a few things
I,
out here and there. See what this works. If this doesn't work, run player play.
there's a couple teams like that this year. I think that's just like, look, the only thing that really matters for this team is what happens in at least the second or third round of the playoffs. Like that's just where you start the year. And this has always been the case. Like you can go back many years to like when Detroit was dominant or Colorado was dominant. It was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, they'll play the whole season, but there's really nothing to watch until we actually get to the playoffs because that's where we're going to find out what this new iteration of the team is.
Right.
So, uh, yeah, good old Tampa Bay.
Mm-hmm. So looking last year, they finished third in their division. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Then Vegas puts Toronto as next at 105.5. You going over or under?
This one's a hard one. I gotta say I gotta go under. I think Toronto's gonna find some way to Toronto, and then the fans gonna freak out, and then they're gonna Toronto even more, and then fans gonna freak out, and then they're gonna put together like they always do, and the fans are still gonna freak out. But I don't think they're getting over 100 points.
I over 100 points. I honestly, that's probably I would say right around 100 points is
Yeah.
probably correct. Um, I could see it also going maybe the other way, and they actually do kind of fall off substantially for whatever reason. And yeah, they end up way under meeting expectations. And I
Mm-hmm.
think a large portion of that might fall on goaltending.
Yeah,
Uh,
I can see that. Mm-hmm.
and yeah, now that said, are they still one of the most talented teams of the league?
Oh yes,
Yes.
but talent doesn't always equal success.
Yeah, and I think last year they had a really good year in a division of teams that weren't really good.
Correct.
And
I agree.
so, what are you going to do when you are being compared against, again, Tampa Bay, Boston, Florida? Um,
Right.
I could see where they're not one of the top three in the division, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then you're fighting for a wild card spot. And once you get into the wild card fight, there's a lot of teams that could be fighting for that spot. So, um, Toronto's in for a critically interesting year, as
I
seems to
would agree.
always be the case with them. So, I feel like that's more on Toronto than we should ever have to talk about.
I like it.
Let's move on to Boston.
All
Boston
right.
had 102 and a half
Word.
points.
You know, I'm gonna take the over on this one.
Now we differ. So far, in case anybody's keeping track at home, we have taken the under so far on all these. Justin's the first time taking the over with Boston at 102.5. Give me your justification for Boston going over 102 points, Justin.
It's Boston. They're just gonna figure it out like they always do every year. It's sickening, but that's what they do.
Watch, they'll trade for Jack Eichel tomorrow, and it will be like,
Yeah.
oh,
Uh huh.
great. Now they're a 130 point team.
Yeah.
Um,
And then
yeah,
look at the rest of this list. I'm like, I don't know. ugh, I don't know who else would do it. So,
So my issue with Boston is if Tuukka Rask isn't going to play,
oh
or he's
right,
that changes what's been a core piece of their thing. Now they may have the next guy up might play better than Tuukka Rask ever did. You
right.
just never. But that's a major component of a guy that can save you a few games throughout the course of the
Oh yeah,
season, or probably
definitely.
almost win you.
Oh yeah, he's
Um,
definitely good for stealing a couple.
and then they lost David Krejci. He went back to Europe to finish out his career, and so they kind of lost their second line center, a guy that ate a lot of minutes and played really well. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how much that's going to affect what they're doing. Yes, they have Taylor Hall, but ultimately you need centers, you need defensemen, you need a goalie. And so Taylor Hall has never really been a difference on any of the teams that he's played, apart from the New Jersey Devils that 1 year.
No, he's been a big difference. He helps people get teams get the number one pick. So you know,
Well, maybe he'll do that for Boston.
hey,
Um,
you know, I would not be upset with that. So
I say we we will at different points throughout this jump in with some bold predictions. I'm going to predict that Boston is a lottery team. They missed the playoffs
wow.
entirely, and they might uh, they might end up getting one of the top two picks in the next year's draft. Like I could totally see where Boston like has one bad year, gets gifted a top two pick, and then is right back the next year winning games.
All right,
That would be my bold prediction this year.
all right, I
Is
got
that
that down.
uh, that
That's
is
pretty
where I should
bold.
say that. That's I mean you got to go bold or go home. Maybe I should just go home.
Yeah, right. Home's nice. I like home. All
Um,
right, so Florida,
Florida
101.5.
101.5. I will take Florida to win the division. I think they'll have
Mm,
110 plus.
okay.
Um, I believe that's a team that is about to take a huge step in the regular season. Uh,
Yep. Put a few things together and
and
get going.
yes, I think you also have um, a major player that is going to be entering his free agent year, to where he will have a phenomenal year and rack up a ton of points, and they'll win a lot of games, and he will get a lot of credit for it, and then he'll hit free agency in the offseason. So that is, and that's in Markov.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I think they are poised for a truly phenomenal year.
I think so. I think they're finally on the uptick of a swing, and should hopefully be there for the next couple seasons.
Mhm. The so we're both taking the over on 101
Correct.
points.
That's correct.
Now let's move on to the defending Stanley Cup losers, the Montreal Canadiens. This division has like the biggest
Oh,
distance between
gee.
the top teams and the bottom teams, because we jump from 101 projected points for Florida to less than 90 points for
So
Montreal.
that's not much of a
Um,
bell curve right there.
there is a huge gap in this division. And so Montreal at 89 and a half is honestly probably right about where I would put them. I would put Montreal
Yeah.
just outside the playoffs.
I would too.
Um, I think because I've taken under on Tampa Bay, under on Toronto, under on Boston, somebody has to get points in this division.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to say I'll take the over on Montreal, but that's basically over at 90, 91, and just missing the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was my reason for putting Boston on the overs. Like somebody's got to pick up the points. I want to say under for Montreal. I want to say that something weird happens in the middle of the season, just kind of derails it, and they can't recover.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty.
For my beloved Detroit Red Wings, 78 and a half. So basically, Montreal's up there at 89. Let's drop another 11 points back down to Detroit.
Yeesh.
Um, this is where the bottom just absolutely falls out of the expectations for this division.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible that the worst two or three teams in the league could come out of the Atlantic.
Right.
It's going to be weird.
Oh yes.
So Detroit, even at 78 and a half, I still think that's too high. I know they should be better this year as a team and as the way they play goes, but I think they will still take a step back, or at least not a step forward as far as standings go, um, when we get to another team here, we will discuss how I think they are better than Detroit, even though the odds makers don't think so.
uh,
So,
I was gonna be optimistic and say over, but then I didn't want to give the kiss of death for you, so I'm gonna take the under. And
well, and
hopefully
this
give you the kiss of positive death or however that works out. You know.
they should at least be a fun, a more fun team to watch
Yes.
this year. Um,
A little more
I've watched
competitive.
I watched a couple of their preseason games, and there's already a difference in some of the coaching as far as the power play goes. Like they actually move the puck on the power play and stuff. Um, we got a young defenseman in Mosier that's going to be fun to watch and develop. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to give up goals and make
Mm-hmm.
bad plays and stuff. It's just part of taking a rookie and throwing him into one of your top two lines. There's going to be some growing pains there. There's going to be some growing pains at forward if we can play some of our younger guys, give some kids a chance. We've really eliminated some of the old dead weight on the roster that didn't make mistakes, but also didn't score a lot of goals.
Right.
And we should be a more exciting team to watch, but also more mistake-driven team to watch. And so it'll be more fun than previous years. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Even though maybe we won't be as we'll still lose a lot of games.
Right, but
um,
it's better a little bit if you lose 6-4 instead of 6-0 or six
this is
one.
absolutely true. Absolutely
So,
true.
yeah,
Give me some highlights.
exactly, exactly.
Um, yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how the goaltending plays out this year because they have an interesting tandem in goal. So
All right.
we'll see. Who
Well,
do we
hope for the
find
best.
next after Detroit?
We got ourselves in Ottawa at 76.5.
Ottawa played so tough last year. They really did.
Mm-hmm.
Again, in a division of scrubs. Um, I just think that for all the unders that I'm taking, I gotta throw some teams in here with the over, and I think Ottawa will basically take the points I don't think Detroit's going to get.
Yeah,
Basically, when those bad teams play each other, I think Ottawa comes out on top, and Ottawa steals some games from the Boston's and the Torontos of the league. So,
I agree, and I'm gonna throw out a bold prediction here. I think Ottawa will make the playoffs.
oh
I
my
think they will squeak in as a
goodness,
wild card.
really?
Yeah, it's probably just haven't had enough sleep lately, but
There's
poor
there's
decisions.
bold predictions, and then there's give your head a shake.
Right.
Um,
All right.
okay,
No,
wow.
I think
I'm not going to talk you out of that one, but
yeah. I might change my mind by the end of this podcast, but here we are. We'll see.
well,
I'm
they
sure.
just announced one of their guys is going to miss a substantial amount of time with an injury he sustained yesterday. So
Oh,
that'll
I
be.
think I missed that news, but eh,
It's hard to remember who's actually a real main player for Ottawa and who's not because they don't have anybody outside of Kachuk and he's not even signed yet.
right.
So we'll figure that out. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
I'm
It'll
sure
be
it'll be
fine.
fine.
It'll be fine.
It'll be
Yeah.
fine. Or they'll make the playoffs or be close to it. How about that?
Okay.
I'll amend
They'll
it a
be
little bit.
playing meaningful games into the last couple weeks.
Yes. Yes. Be competitive.
Okay.
There. I feel a little bit better about that now. Thank you for talking me down a little bit.
Okay. Good.
Oof. All
All right.
right. Now, last
Uh,
team, Buffalo.
Buffalo. Oh dear. Oh
Oh, if
dear.
you thought things couldn't get any worse, we were
I don't know how this
wrong.
team wins any games. They have them at 69 and a half points, and I still am going to take the under. That's just
That's not
I,
even the
I
lowest in the league.
no.
Wow.
I don't know how this team is going to find any kind of wins on a consistent basis. They'll win a game and they'll probably lose four, five, six in a row, and then they'll win a
Didn't
game and lose
they
four, five, six
almost
in a row.
set the streak or did set the streak for longest losing streak last year, or did they get pretty close to it? Or was that
Um,
2 years ago?
I don't remember, and I know Detroit's been flirting with some of those, so
Yeah.
I close my mind to that. Um, so, but when it comes to Buffalo, what was interesting to me today, I listened to the Jeff Merrick show, which has replaced Hockey
Mm-hmm.
Central at noon on Sportsnet, and he had on an actual doctor that is not associated with the league or anything like that, just somebody that he knows. And it was interesting to hear what they were talking about and what's going on with spinal surgeries and those sort of things. And I, I have a very hard time believing that any team is going to trade for a broken Jack Eichel.
I agree.
Like, if you are the owner of the team and you're thinking, or manager of a team, and you're like, okay, if this all works out perfect and I end up with Jack Eichel, that's great. There is also a possible chance that you end up with a broken player for the rest of his life
Right.
that you owe $10 million to do every year for however many years he's signed, which is substantial.
Right. Another thing I'll say too is I don't think a team would trade for him for what Buffalo is wanting. Is
Right.
there isn't like a ridiculous amount of first round picks or something
I,
quote unquote equivalent?
I think it was the equivalent of four first
Yep.
round picks, which means it could be a couple first round picks and a couple guys that were drafted in the first round that are your prospects,
Right.
or guys that are at least young. They're not going to want, oh, this guy was a first round pick in 2005. You can have
Yeah.
him. It's like, no, he's got to be like under 23, 24 and a first round pick
Right.
or a future first round pick.
I mean, if Detroit traded 2 third round picks for him, would you be happy with that?
Two third round picks.
Mm-hmm.
I, 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 I do that in a heartbeat.
Right.
Um,
So Buffalo's got to find the line of what we can get and what's realistic for him. I think if they're going to try
yeah.
and move him.
And I think part of the issue is that you have to realize that you almost never, I don't know that I've ever seen a trade where you trade for a guy that couldn't pass his physical,
Right.
right? Unless it's something that's on LTIR that you're planning just to use for cap space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, which I could see, a team like Tampa Bay
I was just thinking
could
that.
trade for Eichel, take his $10 million, put him over the cap, and fit things in that way, and then still have issues for years because now they're way over the cap.
Yeah.
Um, but then they can be 200 million over the cap next year or whatnot. Wouldn't matter.
I'm sure it'll be fine.
Um, but no, I don't see a scenario playing out. Like I really feel like this is a deadlock, which is why it has gone on so long.
Mm-hmm.
To where I don't know that there really is a solution to this problem without one side completely giving in.
And I feel so bad for Jack Eichel in this situation too.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Mm-hmm.
guy wants to get better, and guy wants to look out for his long term health. And Saber's like, nah, nah.
What I feel bad for is like he currently experiences pain with the injury that he has that needs to be fixed. It's not like he's over here feeling fine and there's some elective surgery that they
Right.
want. It's
Yeah.
like he needs surgery to get better from what is ailing him right now as we speak. And he's been in this pain for months now.
Playing hockey
And
for you guys.
um, it's the kind of bad situation that you never see, and so they're concerned of setting some sort of precedent from any
Mm-hmm.
side
Yeah.
of saying this is how we're going to allow this situation to unfold, which I get, right? From any managerial standpoint, you set a precedent that is weak, it's very hard to ever win that back.
Correct.
So I think there's a possibility Jack Eichel doesn't play at all this year.
I would agree.
And when we hit another time, I can see where around trade deadline, um, there would be a possibility that somebody would trade for Jack Hill just because that's when guys are talking, right? That's when things are being thrown around out there, and he ends up in a 3 or 4 way deal amongst a bunch of teams or something like that, so that you can send first round pick from this team to here, first round pick from this team to
Oh. Mm-hmm.
multiple teams and whatnot. Once you get close to that point, or certainly around the draft where um, it's easier to say, hey, if we trade you this pick, we're picking seventh, and Buffalo knows, hey, at seven we could get this guy. It's more tangible than you can have our whatever pick. It could be 1 or 32 in the coming draft. You would have a better idea of the value of a first round pick once we actually have a draft order set before the draft.
Yep.
So
Yep. Yep. I agree.
I think that's a possibility. What I don't know is why a team hasn't traded for him with conditional picks,
Yeah,
right?
that's the
Because
other thing.
you should be able to say, look, it's a first round pick next year and a first round pick the year after if he plays at least 50 games each of the seasons, or if he at least scores 20 goals in one of the seasons. Like, you put
Yeah.
conditions on the picks where if he doesn't, then it becomes a second round pick, right? So you can take a chance on bringing him in, getting him the surgery he wants, having him recover, having him start to play again. And if he doesn't pan out, you haven't actually lost these first round picks
Right.
essentially for a broken player.
Right.
And I feel like that would be kind of fair to both sides.
I was just thinking the same thing, but I think Buffalo was just like, nope, we gotta rest for all the money because we spent all the money on him and he's worth it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And yeah, I just
Yeah, Buffalo's gonna Buffalo. What else can we say?
yep. So yeah. That said, we'll both take the under and
Oh
we
yeah,
can move on to the Metro.
sounds good. So in the Metro, it looks like they got the Islanders on top at 99.5.
Mm-hmm. Uh, honestly, so the Metro for everybody else is separated like 7 teams are separated by 10 points. Okay, so the Metro is extremely tight. So the fact that the Islanders are on top doesn't really mean anything to me.
Mm-hmm.
It just means that everything is really, really tight, and I think that the Islanders are the best amongst a group of teams. Like, there's literally one game difference between teams. If you
Ooh,
play me
yeah.
and you win and I win, we swap
Or
positions
I beat you in
basically.
overtime this time.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's and honestly, I think that's accurate. I think the Metro is extremely tight. It's basically like the oh, whatever the East Division was that the Mass Mutual East Division last year? Um,
Oh yeah, yeah.
so where it's like, hey, there's like 5 or 6 teams here that are playoff teams that are all in the same division. You have that
Mm-hmm.
this year, aside from the bottom 2 teams, or at least the bottom one team in Columbus, which everybody thinks is probably not going to get out of the bottom of the division. The other 7 teams have a legitimate-ish shot to make the playoffs. I would say 6 of them for sure. New Jersey being the
Yeah, you're
outside
right.
one, but we'll get
Yeah,
down
it's
to
gonna be a
them.
very tough division.
And that's what's going to make the wild card very interesting in the East because you could have a wild card fight amongst all these guys that are going to be chasing potentially 100 points to where if you don't get one of the top spots in the Atlantic, you might miss a wild card,
Right. Yep.
uh,
Yep.
which is where I thought Toronto could get into issues, but I just don't see 3 teams better than Toronto.
Can you imagine if Ottawa
But
beats out Toronto?
if Ottawa beats out Toronto, you get Tampa Bay, Florida, and Ottawa out of the Atlantic, and then 5 teams out of the Metro.
Uh-huh.
That would be chef's kiss.
Oh yes.
Um,
Yes, yes,
that would
yes.
be maximum chaos.
Oh yes, we
You
love
could you could
chaos.
I could see the fires burning in Toronto from my spot
I
here in
say, can you
Michigan.
feel the disturbance in the force?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think we all would.
Um, all right, but we were talking about the Islanders, and for the Islanders, 99.5, you got to think they're going to get 100 or more
Oh yeah,
points.
I agree.
I, I feel like they should be a really good team this year. I just don't see them losing a lot. So I will take the over. What I'm
Mm,
also going to take is this will be my team that represents the East in the Stanley Cup. I
okay.
think this is the year that they get over the hump that they have hit the past 2 years. And assuming guys stay healthy, right? I mean, they got
I
as far as they
know.
did without their captain. I mean, that's pretty impressive. And they got so close. They pushed them to game 7. That could have been them against Montreal. And you can't tell me if the
Oh,
Islanders wouldn't have Montreal as well
they'd mop the
because
floor with them.
they absolutely would have.
Oh yeah.
So it's a yeah, it's definitely what I'm thinking is going to happen.
I would
Sitting
agree.
here 6 months out.
Yeah, right. It's funny how
All
that
right.
happens when the season plays out, and it's like, what? Oh, but no, I agree on the Islanders. I'm, I'm gonna another boldish prediction and say Tampa Bay is gonna three-peat. But if they don't
Whoa.
three-peat, I think the Islanders are gonna be in there instead of Tampa Bay. But I gotta pick
Because
Tampa Bay.
basically, okay. Let's say if you're going to pick Tampa Bay to 3-peat, you kind of have to pick them to
Yeah,
win the East.
but Islanders are my runner-up for sure.
So you think the Islanders play Tampa Bay again in the Eastern Conference Finals?
I think so. Yeah.
That'd be
Yeah.
fantastic.
I know, right? And I think it's gonna be the
Uh,
same coin flip of who makes it out of that one. So,
nice. The
um,
more things change, the more they stay the same.
pretty much, yeah. Pretty much, yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
Reaching into our grab bag of teams in the Metro to look at, because they're basically all the same at this point. Next up, we're going to take Pittsburgh at 96.5 points. I am going to go under because they said Malkin's going to miss the first couple months.
mm-hmm,
Crosby's going to miss the start of the season.
mm-hmm.
I'm not sold on Tristan Jarry in net. and neither are they. And so I think it's probably best to take the under on Pittsburgh. And I would probably even go so far as to say they missed the playoffs.
Ooh, is that another bold prediction right here?
You can put it down as a bold prediction. I don't feel it's all that bold.
Yeah.
I think you look around the division and we're gonna say, look, this team's in, this team's in, this team's in. We're gonna look at the Atlantic and say this team's in, this team's in. And you're gonna be like, okay, there's only a few teams going for a few spots, and if you start the year slow, which I think they very
I
well
agree.
might,
Although
it's
sometimes
gonna
when
be hard
Crosby
to
and
make
Malkin
up.
are out, it doesn't really seem to matter. Like sometimes it does, and other times they like don't even miss a beat, and then they come back in and keep on plugging away. It's really weird and
Yeah,
annoying.
I don't see it this
I don't
year
either.
in
They're all getting
in the
so
Metro.
old.
I think there's times where in the Metro the division was weaker and you could get more wins without your stars. I think as the Metro is getting stronger,
Yeah.
as teams like the Rangers and Carolina and Philadelphia grow and mature into more dominant teams, you're gonna have a hard time squeaking out points without your stars.
Yep, I agree. I agree. Yeah, no, I think the under on that one's the safe pick. Really? That's who's next?
Who is next?
We have the New York Rangers at 96.5.
Well,
Ha!
um, interesting.
That is interesting. I'm going to say under, but that just might be some recency bias of the Rangers doing Ranger things.
So I know the Rangers really rebuilt their team a bit this year and
Mm-hmm.
got tougher and more physical. I don't know if they added a ton of goals, but they might have added some wins, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
like they,
yeah.
they'd be nice. They'd score 8-1, and then they'd lose the 3-2 game.
Right. So not just like add goals, but subtract goals off the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And here's the other thing is they did get rid of their coach and they brought in Gerard Gallant. And Gallant has had some
All
pretty good
right.
first seasons. So I think if there
He
was
can
a
work some
time
magic.
to bet on the Rangers, now is the time.
Yeah. Like I
Um,
said, I just can't bring myself to. I wouldn't be
because
shocked, but I wouldn't bet
there's a
money.
possibility here that the first overall pick of Alexei Lafreniere and the second overall pick of Capo Caco start to blossom this year because they really have not blossomed as of yet.
Mm-hmm.
They've also never had a full off season, a full training camp,
Right. Which that does
in any of
so
that
much.
stuff. And so this might be the first year where like, hey, they can actually be around the team. They can really develop and mature as hockey players on a team that is, you know, decent. Quite
Right.
honestly, they're
Yeah.
rather decent. Um, and so I think there's a chance for them to actually impress this year.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Honestly, if they were to win the Metro, I wouldn't be
Ooh.
stunned, but I don't think I would
Not bold enough for
predict
that
that.
yet.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I want to predict that. I do see where they may be a good playoff team with some of the beefier additions that they have
Okay.
added.
Okay.
Um, but we'll see.
All right. It's exciting
All
stuff
right,
there for sure.
who's next out of that grab bag?
We have Carolina at 95.5. Sounds like a radio
Oh my
station.
god, the Kasperi Kotkaniemi Carolina Hurricanes.
I don't
Well,
even know what to think.
95.5. I cannot imagine them having a bad season.
Yeah.
I really don't. Now, where's your main point of concern with Carolina?
Didn't they trade away like one of their goaltenders? Was that
They basically
Carolina?
have two completely new goaltenders this year,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they no longer have Dougie Hamilton,
Which
which
unpopular
has
opinion.
I think
Yeah.
has its pros and cons,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
You've heard my
what he
unpopular opinion on Dougie Hamilton before, so.
what he does in one end, he costs you in the other.
Uh huh.
Um,
So it's like a net loss or net gain, whichever way you want to look at it.
yeah. There's good nights and there's bad nights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I still think Carolina is going to be a very, very good team. And I really just don't like they were like the third best record last year. They were 2 points behind the Vegas Colorado tie for the President's Trophy last year in what we said was a pretty tough division. the way that the East was set up,
Mm-hmm.
I gotta think they're gonna go over. I gotta think they're gonna be more than a 95.5 point team. Uh, I think they're
Yeah.
gonna be solidly in the playoffs. This is another team I can see winning the division. Like if the Islanders get more than 100 points and don't win the division, I won't be surprised because I
Right.
think Carolina, the Rangers could have 105, 110 points, and it's not going to surprise me. So yeah, I think I'm going to take the
Okay.
over, and I think Carolina will be in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'll take the over, but I think, it's so hard where they put it, which is why the betters, or the people set the odds, have a job. They did a really good job setting this one, I think, because I am having a hard time. I'm waffling, but I'll stick with the over.
Okay. Let me reach into the bag here and pull out another team. Let's go with the Ovechkin Capitals,
Oh, yeah.
um, or the Washington Ovechkins, something
Sure?
like that.
Yeah,
They also have them at 95.5. So they think they are on par with Carolina, and I would absolutely disagree with that.
I would agree with your disagreeing.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think another team that's getting old and just getting old and getting old.
I can see
And,
where Ovi gets 40 goals this year,
oh, yeah.
and they're a ton fun to watch when he's
Mm-hmm.
on the ice. And the rest of the time, it's like this team's missing something,
What kind of
and
hot garbage is this?
it's missing youth.
Yeah.
um,
And Barry Trotz, but, that's another discussion.
Youth Barry Trotz, some good defenders on the defensive end, just a lot of things. Maybe a goaltender. Yeah, I think they're in for a rude awakening. I
I would agree. Do they miss the playoffs, do you think, or this weekend?
I would put them outside the right in the bubble.
Mm-hmm.
They're right in the bubble because like I'm basically saying I expect Carolina, the Rangers, and the Islanders probably top three in the division. So that leaves Washington as a wild card. And you know they're going to be a wild card in with the Pittsburghs, the Philadelphias, the
Mm-hmm.
Floridas or Torontos, or the Bostons and Torontos, or whatever you want to talk. So they're going to be in that fight. I don't think they will have a successful fight.
Their first round exit if they make it.
Yeah, their window has passed. Basically, there's no real way around that. As far as the way that I see them constructed right now. Which I mean, you get a cup window, that's your shot to win them,
Mm-hmm.
and then that cup window passes,
Yep.
and you got to work towards building another one.
And it passes a lot quicker than you
And
think.
yep, it can end in a single year.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
when you thought, hey, we got like 2 or 3 more years to win the cup, or you could be Pittsburgh and you're just perennially in that window because you
Which,
have Crosby or something. I
yeah.
don't know.
I don't know, which is why it's hard for me for pick the under on them. It's like at some point they have to fall off the cliff, just like Boston. At some point they have to fall off the cliff, but they don't. They just keep going, and it's annoying. Very
Yeah.
annoying. Anyways, I guess we can move on to the next one.
Next
Who?
one. So this is where we kind of get our first step down, which is down to Philadelphia, which I'm not sure why they're ranked so low. I mean, this is a team that 2 years ago won the division, I believe.
That sounds right.
Last year had a bad year in a variety of ways. A lot of that was put on the goaltender. I think there's a lot of things that had to do with that.
No, it looks like
But
2 years ago they were a point behind the Capitals in the shortened season, but
I
they
I
probably would
I
have gotten
don't
there.
I don't see an LA Vignon team having 2 bad years back to back. Uh, I think there will be adjustments made. I know there's been some personnel changes. They brought in Ryan Ellis from Nashville,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean they've done some things to improve the team. I think everybody's done some things to improve the team. Not really, not, most teams have. I guess Arizona really hasn't. Buffalo really hasn't.
Buffalo. Yeah.
Uh, most teams have done things to improve their team. Philadelphia is certainly one of those teams,
All right. I'm
and
gonna. No, go ahead.
I would expect more out of them this year. I expect them to be again in that playoff fight.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the under on them. Just because I picked them and talked them up so highly last year, it kind of leaves a bad taste in the mouth. So I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I hope they prove me wrong. But until then, I'm gonna bet against them and take the under.
Okay.
All right, and then we got
Uh,
New Jersey.
this leaves us the New Jersey Hamiltons, and they have them at 89.5. So Why don't you go first on this one? Because I'm curious as to if you're going to say that Philadelphia is going to be below New Jersey this year.
Let's see here. Let me look.
Because so far we've gone through 6 teams and you've taken 2 overs and 4 unders. So somebody's got to be getting points.
Right? Yeah. I mean, maybe they do over, but confidence is not high. I mean, they're probably in the same boat as Philly. They're probably either going to do really well or pull what they
Mm-hmm.
normally do and just soil the bed sheets and move on to next season. But, optimism for them, right?
I'm going to take the under out of the standpoint of I don't trust their goaltending or
Mm-hmm.
Dougie Hamilton
Oh, yeah.
or
No, I don't trust Dougie.
PK Subban. Uh,
Right.
I think they could potentially be a sieve of goals, and playing in this division and just in the NHL in general, in the regular season in general, it's set up to people score a lot of goals. I think they're going to get scored on a lot. They'll probably score some this year, but I don't think they're going to light the world on fire quite yet with the talent, the young talent they have.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So,
won't be shocked if they do under, like at all. But
um, and then we have the poor Columbus Blue Jackets, which I think we just both go under and move on
yep,
from that dumpster fire.
yep.
I just I feel bad for the veterans that are there that suddenly woke up and realized, hey, not only are we no longer a playoff bubble team, we're a lottery team, and we're going to be a lottery team for a while,
Oh yeah,
and it's going to suck. So
yeah.
we will pour one out for the Columbus Blue Jackets before the season even starts.
Yeah, seems fair. Seemed like a good choice. So, all right. Well, that wraps up the East. So to recap, not all of them. You have the Islanders going to the Stanley Cup. I have Tampa Bay. Bold predictions. You say Boston's going to be a lottery team. Get a 1 or 2nd pick. And Pittsburgh makes the playoffs. We leaving that one. You changing it to something else?
Um, I'll put it this way: Boston and Pittsburgh both miss the playoffs, and one of them gets one of the top 2
Okay.
picks.
All right.
Because obviously they miss the playoffs, they'll both be lottery teams, and I think it's just set up to where it's like, oh, this team has perennially done great, and honestly, it'll probably be Pittsburgh because they'll go from, hey, we had Mario, hey, then we got to draft Crosby, and the next one, hey, we'll get to draft Shane Wright. And
Yeah.
they'll always have this phenomenal generational, one of a kind top line center, and they'll just continue to be good for another 15 years because they'll get Shane Wright in the next draft.
Right. Yeah. That would also be annoying. But here we are. All right, my bold predictions. Ottawa will be either a playoff team or close to it, and Tampa Bay will three-peat.
Nice.
All right, anything else on the East before we wrap this one up?
No, I think that's a pretty concise and probably terribly inaccurate and stupid predictions for the East this year.
But hey, that's the fun of it, right? So if we're right, we look like geniuses. Wrong, like, well, that's in sports. You can't predict sports.
What would be interesting is to look at like what the lines are right now and say, okay, if we put $10 on each one of our picks, and then for the end of the year, and be like, hey, would we have made money or lost money
There you go.
on this? That would be interesting.
That would be indeed. But that's a little
That
bit.
sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, so that's a little more work and a little more know-how than I have to figure out. So we'll just never know. I mean, we'll kind of know if we, come out ahead more than we come out behind. Then we'll call it good.
Probably true.
Alrighty, well, let's wrap up this East Coast talk. I am Justin,
I'm Alexander.
and stay tuned for part 2 for the Hockey Podcast You're about to hear, which you just did, and we will talk at you hopefully here in just a few minutes.